we shall never know just how many historical documents are in fact counterfeit. History in general goes hand in hand with a history of forgeries. Countless chronicles as well as works of art and literature have been considered authentic for centuries before becoming denounced as counterfeit. A presumed fragment of Cicero's De Consolatione discovered by the famous humanist scholar Sigonius only became identified as a work of the latter 2 centuries after the death of the author. We would probably still believe in Cicero's authorship of said fragment if it hadn't been for the discovery of Sigonius' written confession. Similar examples are rather abundant. The Thespian poet Lucius Varus, who turned out to be a 18th-century Dutch scientist by the name of Heerkens, plagiarizing from the 16th-century Venetian author Corrario, classical texts sold to the Leipzig library by a certain Schennis in the 1920s and so forth. Think of just how many remain undiscovered. After all, the larger part of the iceberg always remains underwater. However, there may be an equal amount of valid historical documents in existence that were declared forgeries due to their being at odds with the official history. Anatole Fomenko, the prominent mathematician, was the first to apply natural scientific methods to historical data, coming up with a revolutionary theory which implies a radical revision of history as we know it. This theory finally explains such historical oddities as the existence of Christian tabernacles in the pagan town of Pompeii and the Ottoman Turks referred to as Persians in medieval documents. It is rendered in Fomenko's fundamental work entitled, History, Fiction or Science, which is finally out in English.
This book will change your entire perception of history forever. What if ancient Rome, Greece and Egypt were invented during the Renaissance? What if the Old Testament was a rendition of events in the Middle Ages? What if Jesus Christ was born in 1053 and crucified in 1086 AD? Sounds unbelievable? Not after you've read History, Fiction or Science by Anatole Fomenko, the leading mathematician of our time.
Popular fiction dealing with conspiracies of one sort or another is actually quite tame as compared to reality. Dan Brown pens a possible conspiracy of the Church against the memory of its originator Jesus. He follows unknowingly in the steps of Martin Luther, who started his Protestant revolution with accusation of papal conspiracy in the matter of Constantine's testament. Well, Martin Luther was right and Constantine's testament was false. Remember, poor Martin Luther had as media outlet nothing better than the doors of the Wittenberg's cathedral. Dan Brown has mass media at his disposal. The Roman Catholic Church, for instance, is involved in a much greater hoax than the most daring writer could possibly conceive of, one that deals with the very foundations of history itself. The above statement is neither an exaggeration, nor a metaphor. Very few people are aware that the BC AD chronology as we know it was created by a handful of Jesuits in the 16th-17th century, Joseph Scaliger, Dionysius Petavius and their successors. We have grown so accustomed to a timeline that runs through many millennia, from the Egyptian pyramids to the present day, that the mere thought of questioning its veracity seems perfectly preposterous, just like the notion of a rotating Earth must have seemed in the epoch of Galileo Galilei, and just as heretical. But nevertheless, the entire conception of ancient and medieval history known to us today owes its existence to a 16th-century Jesuit hoax. A hoax that has finally been exposed with the aid of astronomy, mathematical statistics and modern computational facilities by one of the world's leading mathematicians, the Russian academician Professor Anatole Fomenko. His fundamental work on chronology, history, fiction or science, now available in English, is more fascinating than Dan Brown at his wildest. Yet it is truly a non-fiction work, That goes to say, everything else you have read about history should probably classify as fiction.
This book will change your entire perception of history forever. What if ancient Rome, Greece and Egypt were invented during the Renaissance? What if the Old Testament was a rendition of events in the Middle Ages? What if Jesus Christ was born in 1053 and crucified in 1086 AD? Sounds unbelievable? Not after you've read History, Fiction or Science by Anatoly Fomenko, the leading mathematician of our time.